my. Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice, and today we're just entering Scorpio season, and my guest is PoHong. Po is a triple Scorpio. She's an energetic healer, Taoist, author, embodiment spiritual healer. She has been everything from a stockbroker to an Om meditation franchisee. And she's currently running 2 or 3 groups, Coin, VIP, and Yin. And we're going to discuss the intersection of sex and money, which is where I think the patriarchy kind of like hits the deepest. I think that's like the groundwork, the root of the patriarchy. So how can we move forward from it if we don't put it under the microscope? So welcome to the show, Po.
Thank you for having me.
I do feel that the intersection of our boundaries, is where we are most fecund. It's also where we're most frightened, right? and also, and another similar irony is that we are always our nature, our physical body, brute nature, but the closest we get to our nature, the more sick we feel. Right.
Sick, you mean? You said
like
sick?
Unwell, uncomfortable, right? Like whether it's sex or death or just bodily functions of any kind.
Yes, it's very uncomfortable place for most people, most humans.
Right. And wait, why? We have like cultured ourselves into something akin to like physical non-existence.
Right, exactly. It's so true.
So, instead of kind of like looking to get away from our body further and further, like, for example, in a spaceship going to like outer space, we might look for ways to reconcile with like nature, where our presence, may be at risk precisely because we've gone so far from it, from like our own sense of what we are before culture, before all of our constructs. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, sex and money, your realm of expertise, is how we got
here.
Scorpionic. Very scorpionic. Yeah. It's how we got here, I think, because incentivizing kind of like, the need for knowledge, is what money originally, I think, was invented for, So basically, like at the very, very beginning of it all, we have the male and the female. The female has the procreative advantage in the sense that she conceives, and at some point in our history, she more or less knows who the father is. And and I don't know when, it became kind of like obvious or intuitively clear to men that it's like one child per man, so that even if she slept with like 50 guys in that month, there's still one father for the progeny. But at some point, men who had this existential insecurity, because he's born without a womb and he has to go to woman to kind of like, have a genetic future, to have a future, realize that, these kids might be his, and how does he access that knowledge? And, from that kind of like hope to not be left outside from like the warmth of, family and and life making, from that hope comes the fear of, will I ever know the truth? How do I know the truth? And then come all these different ways of, of controlling knowledge, of acquiring that ultimate knowledge, right? So whether it's, taking a woman when she's a virgin before she's in procreative, age, and tramping her basically until menopause, or whether it is, incentivizing her financially and paying her and marrying her and supporting her and protecting and whatever it is, so in exchange for that knowledge, for that guarantee that this baby is mine too. I think that's where the entire construct of the patriarchy began. Yeah. And as we have moved into the present moment, which I think is like more of post-patriarchy, since like the invention of paternity testing and birth control, right, and artificial insemination, when we have separated actual sex from procreation, and we've made it super easy and cheap for a guy to know whether or not he's the father. So we have put an end to the existential reason of the patriarchy. So we're in post-patriarchy. So what remains is all the incentives. What remains very strong is the financialization of this kind of like procreative exchange, right? That's where you come in. It's a very complex, I think, knot of how the womb and survival or wealth, generational wealth, or kind of like security are interwoven. So yeah.
I really love your perspective, because I never really, I know that's all true in regards to the history and patriarchy, but I don't usually look at it through that lens. So it's really lovely to hear your take on it, so I can see it from a different perspective, because the work I do is so energetic based and in the body and individual, even though obviously it's connected to the collective in every single way, right? So I really am appreciating listening to you talk about it in that way.
So tell us a little about the work you do.
So for me, in regards to money, it's connected to the lineage. So like kind of what you're talking about, like our ancestral and cultural and collective energetics, how it's passed down and how it seeps into our system, and how these stories, like money stories, let's call it, live in the psyche as well as the body. And even just from, one experience as a child, I always, like, one of the assignments I always give is like, what is your first memory of money?
Yeah.
Like something so that could seem so insignificant, like that you haven't even thought about, but then I guide you into thinking about what that first thing is. It could be like 5 years old, right? Like say you stole something and then you got whipped or something because of that. What did that actually implant into you around what money means, or the power of money, or the lack of, or scarcity and things like that? So I help people follow those threads of, and then also really it's sensation based, because so many people are so uncomfortable with the topic of money that they will do anything to get out of their body in order to not deal with money. And so a lot of the work we do is like staying in your body and feeling the emotions and sensations that live there in the discomfort of money in your life. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. And sex and money in particular, because they're both, so uncomfortable. And I think we experience both, like in a sense, being money when it comes to like sexual transaction or exchange. I don't mean sex work at all. I mean everyday life, a dinner date or whatever, becomes both a turn on, an empowerment in the sense of I am liked, and also a fear, a turn off in the sense of what am I selling? What am I giving away? Or, how much authenticity do I have left when there is, even like $5 involved, right? So it all, it's like such a complex layered construct that we sit on top of, and it's not well balanced. It's not at all firm. It's not at all stable, right? Money's energy comes and goes, so it makes us feel like insecure and wobbly the whole time. And definitely, I think that for children, it's a source of, it's a sense of like worthlessness, and dependency, because you don't have your own money. So whatever your narrative is and whatever your memories are, someone else, is giving you money, or you're trying to steal money from someone else, but you don't have it for so long. And so we already like are raised understanding our powerlessness as our poverty, because one of the main controls of parental authority and therefore patriarchy is the financial control. I mean, for the first 20 years of your life, on average, you're just dependent on someone else to finance your existence. That's like a disease already,
But never thought about that. I love that though. Yes.
Right. I mean, think what that does to your prefrontal lobe.
Seriously. Yeah. I mean, you hit it on the head because it's really like, what is your self-worth? Because I really believe the amount of self-worth reflects also the net worth in some senses. Not always in every case, but like a lot of the work I do is about increasing your havingness level, meaning like your capacity to hold energy and abundance in your system. So we really focus on this frequency of prosperity and the possibility that everybody has connection to the spirit of money. It's very much a spiritual process and an emotional alchemical process, and also a physical, like material part too, because that's real. We have to learn how to manage money and things like that. So it's not about bypassing, the physical, but we have to acknowledge the spirit, the energetic piece of money, and how we feel about our worth if we can actually receive it. Because there's also people who have tons of money or can make lots of money, but can't hold on to it. And so that tells me, there's a leakage. I work a lot with energetic leakages, and like, how are you leaking this energy in your life in connection to how you feel about yourself underneath in the subconscious and in the pain body?
Yeah. And that's, I guess, part of what you call alchemy, right? Turning one thing into another.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's so fun for me because like the way I see the body and sensations and the pain body is like, it's like a game. It's like an adventure. There's so much in this unseen world that lives in the body. Like I see sensations as little fairies. Like they are always constantly communicating with us. Can we actually understand the language of the body and what it is saying, and following through with that intuitive listening. But the alchemy can only happen when we like drop into the body and feel those subtleties.
Yeah. Become conscious and remove judgment, which is one of the hardest parts. I think it's it's slightly easier to become conscious than it is to let go of, inherited judgment, whether it's self-judgment or judgment of, sexual or financial behavior. And, buying love, I mean, that alone is just such a huge part of, of our definition of human connection.
That's an I love how you say it, like buying love is like, that's happens so often. Like in Coin, my membership, there's, so the victim consciousness triangle, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's like the victim, the perpetrator, and the rescuer. And I see so often with women that they, they can be in victim, but the rescuer is so prevalent. So this is like the martyr, right? Like somebody who is like, let's say, will over donate and give away money, not because it feels good to them or because it feels true in their body, but because they feel guilty for having wealth, let's say, right? So if you're giving something from guilt, then you're not giving from a place of true generosity of love, right? It's different. You're giving from a place of scarcity. And so when we talk about women and with money, like it really has a lot to do with this rescuer role. I notice this pattern over and over again. It's fascinating, actually.
Yeah. But as we were talking about like childhood, the early formative years, right? So parents express love by buying things, and sometimes show punishment by taking away things, right? So this kind of like buying of love is deeply ingrained, and I think that there are plenty of people who by themselves cannot be convinced that they're lovable if they're not, paying for something. So even if they are being loved, they have no access they can't access that unless they can pay for it. And then they feel that, well, the accounts are, more fair.
Right.
And again, I think
it's like
that
commerce-based.
Yeah, commerce-based. Yeah.
I can't receive unless I give.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Or I give to receive.
Yeah. Maybe. And, or to be liked, or to get, respect, or to somehow belong, which again, I think like it's definitely related to the procreative difference, which is, for whatever reason, right now in this brief moment, a taboo subject. But, anatomical difference, as in sexual difference, is not the same as like procreative potential or imperative, right? So you can have any sex organs and have your, procreative function be what it is. So like to me, you can be a woman who procreatively is a father. You can be a man who procreatively is a mother. They are very separate. We've separated, as I said, like procreation from sex, and they're not like antithetical because, parenthood is like a transitional category. You go in it and then out of it. You graduate from it and you resume like all your other identities and your love life. So it's not like a lifelong kind of identity that has to be gender bound. But okay, that was a parenthesis.
I love that. As you being a writer, I love that you emphasize the parentheses.
Yeah. But basically, I do think that it all comes from that, original idea of the patriarchy. I will look after you, if you share, if you like have my kid, or if you share the kid that you have and, so like it's mine, choose my whatever, momentary like insemination to be the one that, you carry forth. In exchange, I will support, right? I will finance, I will pay. So that's just so, so fundamental, that idea, of financial exchange for like love, loyalty, family, fidelity, trust, all kinds of these like huge, aspects of human community and tribe that we all by nature, by instinct, look for and want all the time. Yeah, so having grown out of the existential reason for it, I think we're just completely right now, confused as to how to proceed. Like, how much of it do we keep? How much of it don't we keep? Whether it's like marriage and divorce law or reproductive law, for example, there is so much conversation about money in it, so like that type of like financial exchange for procreative work, not so much sex, which is way underpaid.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, that is very much a foundational aspect still, of our culture. So, and I think that's what makes money and intimacy, money and sex, money and transparency, sex and transparency still so, taboo, and awkward. Because we kind of like perpetuate the appearance of it, the practice of it, the habit of it, even though we don't really have to.
Yeah, it lives in the system. And like, you connected sex, with money earlier, and it's so true. What I've seen is that women who are very disconnected from their sex and their pussy, I call it pussy. My necklace says pussy magic. I'm very proud. If I've noticed that when there's a disconnection in that area, or when people reconnect with that part of them, there's this whole thing that opens around money, because it's all connected energetically anyway. And not only the electricity and turn on that can happen, which is like power and orgasmic force, right? When I say orgasmic, it's not like climax. It's just like this orgasmic life force that lives in us. Then all kinds of things start to open, healing happens, the alchemy happens, and magnetism happens. So more opportunities, more abundance with community, and more abundance with money. And also there's a sense of being in your power when you have that connection with your sex. I have a history of multiple rapes in my teens. And so this is why I went deep into the work around my sex, is because of my own healing work that I needed to do. And so I've seen what's possible when we are able to be in a new kind of intimate relationship with our sex versus that pushing away or disassociation, or saying, oh, it's just something down there. Like, it's not part of who we are,
Yeah. I know. And there's so many parts. Yeah, to it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's part of the work too. Like when I work with people with money, women with money, it's also about connecting to your sex and your pussy. It's not separated, it really is a part of it. And I think a lot of times people think money is this compartmentalized topic where it's just about like, asking, getting more income or working with your debt. It's like, no, it's so much deeper than that, because when we're connected to the pussy of our sex, the power of our sex, then everything starts to expand.
Yeah, I agree. And the root chakra, as you know better than I, because you work with it, is the chakra of both sex and money. So, and I do think there is a reason for that, having been there for a longest time.
Yeah,
we're
the root
sitting on it.
Yeah, we're literally sitting on it. I just had a huge root chakra healing, which I totally relate. But yeah, if we do not feel safe, because the root chakra is really about this sense of safety and security, and home and things like that. But like, if we're not able to feel safe in our bodies, which so many women are not feeling that
we're
way.
not. Yeah, we're not. There's no way. Yeah.
I mean, I have been able to get to a place where I do, with many, many years of deep diving alchemy work. But like, so it is possible. I think anything is possible. But like, if
no,
we don't
I meant to say, I'm sorry to interrupt. I meant to say, not feeling safe, not in the home, but in, like an unaccompanied woman at night, late at night in the dark.
Yes.
Is just by definition still not safe,
Absolutely. That's why I have my mace.
There you go. Yeah. That's what I was referring to. Yeah.
Yes. But like, when I say like, oh, I feel safe in my body, it's like, oh, there was a way that even when I would be by myself, as a sexual trauma survivor, I still didn't feel safe. And there's so many women out there that feel that way, even if they're not in a compromising situation, And so if we do not feel safe in our body and grounded in that root chakra energy, then yes, there's like a leakage of energy that happens, and it's harder to receive, because it's hard to receive when you don't feel safe. It's hard to have, it's hard to hold all that goodness when we feel we don't deserve it, So it's so critical.
Yeah. And you reclaimed, I think it's super admirable that you went through the Om meditation program and kind of like reclaimed, agency and comfort and a sense of like, the sexual body is being, the body that we're born with and, and endowed with, and I love that part. Because I think it's fundamental to healing. We live in such a kind of masculinized society where women as well as everybody else see ourselves in an objectified way. We objectify a relationship with our own body. We see everything through the so-called male gaze. We use a language in which the subject, the I, is masculinized. We are now in a moment where like our most natural functions are very medicalized. There's a lot of like intervention, that turns like wellness into the appearance of illness. Yeah. So finding a way to reclaim that, and going down what's considered, again, taboo or, unclear.
Yes, I went down that rabbit hole.
Right. I think that's the way to do it, because that's where the truth lies, where kind of like the I don't want to say forbidden, because that's such a simple word, but where the unspeakable is, that's where the truth is.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. And it really takes a radical choices, like being a radical person, because to disrupt the status quo, you need to be radical in your own healing. And so, I could be seen as an extremist from some people because of my radical ways. I radically forgive. I'm radically honest. I radically love. Like whatever it is, I'm going to go there because I want to see what's on the other side. I already know what's on the side of suffering. I already know that very clearly from many, many, many years. But I want to see what else is possible. And so I want to touch that truth.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, touch that truth. And, I think that's a metaphor, but
I was going there too. I'm with you, Yuri. Yes. The clit is like...
Yeah, stroke that truth.
Stroke the truth. the more you stroke, it's interesting with orgasmic meditation. Part of that, the practice and the way they would teach it is that as we would Om, which is short for orgasmic meditation for people who don't know, the more you Om, the more you thaw, quote unquote, the more, because there's so many women who are so frozen and locked up in their second chakra. And so that practice completely helped me to move trauma through my body and thaw and soften, because I was so hardened, from this culture that we're talking about. I was so afraid. I wanted to hide. I gained 40 pounds after my first rape, as a subconscious protective mechanism from the male gaze, right?
Yeah.
And so
we contract. We're always in a place of contraction, because we need to contract in order to appear masculine enough to be given a job, to be given a place, in whatever Congress, to be given a name and a voice that's not our father's or our husband's name, right? So in order to kind of earn those rights, I think, feminism is, life-changing and conscious-changing as it has been, has kind of focused too much, on getting women the rights that men have by insisting that we're like men, but we're not,
Exactly.
They live on a 24-hour base, cycle. We live on a monthly cycle, We're much more as watery and, inclusive, and we're just not that, regimented and structured and orderly.
We're wild. We are wild.
We are. We run. We do run with the wolves.
Yes, we do. And I feel like the more women can give themselves permission to tap into their messiness, this wildness, their emotions that are wild, be in approval of it, then magic just starts to happen from that place. Because then they're just landing into their true nature, like what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. And I think that the other thing that, we must resist is, the voice of the male authority. That's always there. But if you can recognize it, if you can figure that out, in a sense, language is not our friend, medicine is, Western medicine or whatever you want to call it is not our friend. And I don't mean, I'm not talking about vaccines and bullshit, so I'm fully vaccinated. That's not what we're talking about. But what we're talking about is that, you're 17, 16, 19, 20, 28, you go to see your gynecologist for your appointment, and the first question is, what's your birth control? By all means, if you conceive, you're ruined. You're done, because you're no longer a dude, so from that, there's so much of that implanted bias, and fear of the unpredictability and the lack of control that comes with the female, body, the procreative capacity and all of that, right? Even menstruation, now, birth control includes suppressing menstruation. So, we're getting further and further from understanding our actual nature, which is wild. It's lunar. And it's, it rises and subsides, right? It's wavy. It has this dance-like quality of, Kali, or it understands, birth and death, the hacks, which is the hacks of the algorithm, where, where one becomes 2 or 3, and then one becomes 0. I mean, we're very comfortable with that, and the masculinized system is not. So it all is presented to us as a kind of contradiction, a split, right? And because we're taught and trained intellectually and mentally by this specific system, we tend to compress and contract and oppress, and camouflage all the, biological, hormonal, energetic qualities that, that don't fit in that picture. So that's why we're always contracted and tight and like nervous and, unsure of the boundaries. And, that's what you were explaining. You begin with like everything shut down.
Very shut down, extremely. I couldn't feel. Like when I first started oming and they're stroking my clit, I couldn't feel. I was numb. And so many women are that, and they're like, oh, something wrong with me? No, this is just a byproduct of what happens, in this kind of culture. And I agree with you with this birth control. As an acupuncturist, I would work with many women who were on birth control and had all these symptoms. I'm not anti-birth control. I respect anybody's choice, but I personally haven't put that in my body because I've seen what happens, and people just do it just because they're told to without actually having critical thinking and doing inquiry, and more importantly, asking their body if they actually want to receive it. Actually asking your body, do I want to have this in my body? But yeah, I think what you're saying about this contraction, like the feminine is the most powerful force there is, right? So I'm a Taoist. My dad is a Taoist spiritual teacher, and he's my spiritual mentor. And he's always taught me about yin, which is the feminine, right? And how it's not that it's more important than the masculine because they work together. It's just that the masculine has been so in excess for so long that has taken over that the feminine was in a deficient space. And now I feel like what's happening in the collective, people are starting to wake up and see how powerful the feminine is. And what's required in my experience and how I guide women is to slow the fuck down.
Oh yeah. Amen.
Slow down. Because the masculine is all about force, and making it happen and doing it fast and all mental. And the feminine is just about feeling what is next. How do I feel now? And then what about now? Moment to moment, intuitively, And so that in order to feel that intuition, you can't feel it unless you're going slow.
Yeah. Yeah. Because your intuition, your first response is like your learned response, right? So usually, unless you're extremely tuned into your intuition, usually you react out of like whatever, fear dynamics or other dynamics, excitement dynamics, whatever you were taught, by your parents who didn't know any better because they themselves were like totally oppressed. So it's no one's fault. We've all been in it together. But basically, slowing down and checking in and, looking for your, second response and looking for your inner voice and what you're being led to do, if that can even be something that you can be, conceive, because it's really what we don't have a lexicon for, Again, it's back to like all the stuff that's unspeakable, because what's ours has never been really expressed, because this language was created precisely to kind of make up, for men's procreative disadvantage, I think, and it did so in a myriad ways, right? So, but, there is just so much messaging, whether it's like how you get paid by work or how you prioritize, what matters to you, your life choices, how you're valued and respected by those around you, all of that stacked against us, against the feminine. And also, like even our time, like again, back to procreation, the youth of the egg, it lasts a very short time. It begins, the procreative function, let's say, becomes a possibility before we're fully grown, which is how you get raped young, because you have, your body is ready long before your brain is fully formed. And I think that's because we have so much fucking culture that it takes longer and longer for our brain to like fully form, because there is more and more shit to learn, and catch up on. So by the time you're fully grown, which is like in your mid-20s, you literally have like 10 to 20 years where, you're procreatively optimal. 10, maybe 20. That's it, And then you look at like the masculine, which is the norm in the world, and they can, ejaculate. It takes them a couple of seconds. It's unconscious, and they can do it into their 90s, potentially, right? So that's a very different cycle. And yet we are stuck in that same cycle where it's like, well, in your 20s, you accumulate your credentials, in your 30s, you build your career, which is what, men should do. But by the time, you have also done it that way, it may be too late, and then you go to like the medical establishment and the chemists and the geneticists and whatnot, trying to, again, find a way to have a child, which would have been so much simpler and easier, 20 years ago, but it made no sense. It just made no sense because, there is no respect for being a mom. Like you want to be a somebody, right? So all of that, and yeah, we have like, now we have options like freezing your eggs, but it's all a complication. It's like a medical complication, and it's a cost, and
it can be painful.
Yeah, it's painful. And again, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's just a small example of how our culture is geared toward one functionality only. No matter what your gender, no matter what your appearance, has nothing to do with any of that. You can be as gender nonconformist, gender queer as you want, but you're still going to be in that basic masculinized system that we're all going by.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's why I was saying earlier about how you need to be radical, because it's just like all the forces around the masculine energy, which again, I think is beautiful. I think masculine is amazing. It's not against masculine. It's the excess and the systems that's been created based off of that, and how it's like completely out of balance. But like, yeah, it's such a force that we as women and men as any gender need to be willing to surrender within ourselves, because it's like, yes, there's the aspect where we need to do social change, but I believe, and I don't know what you think about this, Yuri, there's only so much that can happen in terms of change on the outside if we don't do the work within ourselves. Like, I really believe that each person is being called to do their own inner work around tapping into their feminine, no matter what gender you are, because the feminine is the force. It is it is the creative force. It is the power, and I'm really looking forward to like that kind of level of awakening over and over again. Yeah.
I mean, I think that what you said about radical applies to social change, that if there would be social change that would help us, it would have to be radical, much more radical than the bullshit that we, that's being discussed currently in the House and the Senate, which in fact, perpetuate an obsolete system. But yeah, I think that there is place for social change, but it would have to be, kind of like a programming update. And in my opinion, it would normalize and maybe even monetize, finance a different type of learning. So instead of just going to college to get a degree, to start a career, there would be like much more time to do the learning that you're talking about. And also, perhaps to go through our procreative work if we, decide that we want to do that. And understand, the the reality around us and how it could be changed. Because what happens currently is that the people who do find themselves in this space, and who are really my audience, and my friends and my allies, many of them men, I agree with you, we totally need the masculine for so much, like strength, support, structure, so much, systems, estimates, logistics, please.
Yes,
But,
thank you.
Yes, thank you. I know. Thank you for all this stuff around me. But the point is, the point is that even the people who do find themselves here, can really, in their majority, access it later in life, when you have made some money, when you have earned some free time, when you have paid your dues, whether, in relationship or some other kind of like family setup or structure, or made your choices and decisions, and then you open up, time to look inward and look for balance, But imagine like how radical it would be if we would do that when we're still growing up,
Exactly. Exactly. Like,
Right?
I want to see that. Like, can we talk about money and healing and sex and all of the feminine in grammar school? Can you imagine?
A generation. I mean, we need the generation of difference. That's what we need. I mean, and by a generation, I mean a few generations. Where our education. Yeah, I think that's the only way to actually have like real change. That's not at the individual level, and until then, we gotta do the work with ourselves and, our kids and our friends and, our tribe, and support each other, and try and push it all forward. I mean, keep rolling with it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think like, platforms like this, or, all the women that I know that are doing amazing work, it just keeps us inspired and reminding us what the work needs to be done. Like I see so often in women that they are very intellectual. So this is the masculine that has taken over so many women's bodies, is that they understand. And I was this woman too. So this is why I know this pattern so well, is that I always understood all of my issues. I could tell you my stuff inside, outside, backwards, why it happened. I could totally tell you all my pathologies, etc. But I was still depressed and not happy and suffering. It wasn't until I let myself work into the body, until embodiment work, when things started shifting with the alchemy. You can't outthink your pain body. It just lives in you. Like people don't realize how much is remembered, how much the body remembers and stores, And so just because you know things intellectually and are smart and can explain all the things doesn't mean shit. You can still like be completely miserable, because it doesn't matter. It really all comes down to getting into the feminine.
Yeah. And we live in a moment like that, where we are in our news cycle, in our national conversation, in our zeitgeist, confronted by the loss of like a centralized truth machine, right? And so, it's interesting that we are seeing that you can explain everything, you can turn everything around, you can reverse the reversal, you can like project the projection, ad nauseum. Like, there is really no end to how much of that kind of like intellectualization or, linguistic justification and, renaming and we can
over processing.
Exactly. We can do, and just keep basically going back and forth doing this, like somersaults,
and you know what happens?
Of meaning. Yeah.
What happens so often in that kind of scenario is that women start to think that it's not possible for me to heal. because they are in this cycle, which is like a hamster wheel. Then they think, oh, it's not for me. I can't have it. And that's not true. It's just that what you've been doing has been from the head up. What I joke around is that there's so many women here with they're like just floating heads, you know, it's like a cut off. The neck down is like they don't even know what's there, you know?
Yeah.
And so they just create this hamster wheel going and going. And it's painful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And
they lose belief in themselves.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, when something happens with the body, the first response is, oh, disease, you know, meaning wrong, meaning fix it, you know, rather than, you know, looking into it and learning from it and growing with it. It's like, cut it out, you know, like what's the antidote, you know?
Exactly. Fix me.
Yeah. Give it medicine so I don't feel it, or, you know, give it like an antidote, or, you know. So yeah, it's just the relationship with, you know, or like go on Google. You know, this kind of like deification of Google, you know, that's going on. It's surreal because it's like, hey, you know, Google is like an aggregate of what people have thought in patriarchy, right? Mostly guys, you know, have come up and written, guys with big ideas of themselves, how they've explained this and that and the other thing, right? Guys with like degrees and, you know, I mean, and again, women, but women who speak in those intellectualized ways, right? So when you get all of your wisdom and you're like, you know, answers from that shit, you ignore like thousands of years of feminine knowledge and wisdom that was passed down, you know, mouth to mouth, or even without words, like just by what our ancestors did, you know, in nature, how they dealt with things, how they healed things, you know, our relationship to like moon and water and herbs and, you know, so much, you know, the meridians in acupuncture, you know, this, you know, the spots of the body, the energy places. And so all of that's not on Google.
I know. And then everybody thinks that they're a master at it because they researched it, you know?
I know. They got like a freaking scientific name for it. Like... And
so funny.
Yeah, and they end up in, you know, ER for like something that's totally a normal reaction. And, you know, yeah.
This brings up an interesting topic around consumerism, because a lot of times consumerism isn't just about like buying something. So when we talk about money, you know, it's like, what is your reason? Is it true that you want to buy it, or are you just like buying it without any consciousness? But also, people are consuming so much information that many people who are in the self-development and healing, like what they're trying to heal, they're consuming, but it's not being digested and integrated into their life and into their system. So they have all that knowledge again, but it's not like going deeper.
Yeah, it's this thing you said, you know, slow down. Yeah, if you don't slow down, you don't give yourself time to actually understand the stuff that you've, you know, purchased. You know, just like buying it is not enough to use it. You know, the work is in the using it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and everything takes time. Like all knowledge takes time, you know, which is another one of these like falsehoods, you know, about Googlification. Like you can't be an expert by Googling something. You know,
you can think you are, but you actually aren't. Yeah.
Knowledge takes so fucking long. I mean, it's
experience.
Like
real life experiences, like really like allowing yourself to be fully surrendered into an experience and feeling it all the way through. Yeah. You know?
And, you know, and remembering even, you know, like as you were saying earlier, like we definitely have, you know, a lot more memory data, you know, storage and stored in our brains that we don't access because we don't take the time to try and go back there and see what it is that in a similar situation or with an elder or, you know, somewhere in our time in this world, what it is that the message that we received. So, and that takes time too. It's not just like, a quick fix. There is no quick fix. But
no, exactly. That I think that's the culture, like you said. It's like, it's all about trying to fix everything. It's like once we see it as something that doesn't need to be fixed and just needs to be seen and held and felt, then it naturally heals on its own. We don't have to force and make it happen. My dad taught me that, and I'm forever grateful for his wisdom, because I was always trying to fix myself. I wanted to just like have a certain outcome, which is very masculine based, right? I want to do this to get that, to get there. And instead, he just instilled this knowing that like, you just accept and embrace where you are in this moment, no matter if you're like enraged, you're sad and bawling, or in your joy, because some people deny their joy as well. Right?
Oh yeah. Or they don't want it to last. They're like, okay, let me get out of here to something more familiar. And it's like, wow.
Yeah. It's deep.
Yeah. It's deep, and it's worth it.
That's what I mean. As a Scorpio, we reside in the bottom of the ocean, so I find, and I don't live there all the time because I'm very also light as well. But I feel like, from my experience, in order to have the transformation, you must be courageous enough and willing to go into those deeper, unseen, unknown spaces that are, people call it shadow work, people call it darkness, but it's all it is just the unknown, and people are terrified of the unknown by nature. Yeah.
But it's not quite unknown. It's just unspoken. It's like I think that deep down we know it and we're comfortable with it. We just have not, like formally organized and embraced our knowledge, our articulation of it.
That's so true. Exactly. It's living within us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got this. And that's why we're here. And that's why we keep, continuing this conversation. So thank you for coming on the show, Po. This was amazing. And I am happy that I had you. And everybody out there, keep listening. And until next week, keep speaking sex. If I could make love incessantly, I would be God.